Okay, welcome back everyone to the second part of the energy track. We now have with us Martha Frysztacki, who has a background in mathematics and got a PhD from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. Martha became one of the core developers of PyPSA, which is an open source energy planning optimization framework, and has now co-founded the Open Energy Transition. And she will tell us more about that now.
Yeah, thanks for the kind introduction. I first have a question to the audience. So who of you have already heard of PyPSA or PyPSA Earth? Wow, that's half of the room. That's surprising. So, okay. PyPSA is actually not a tool or anything that we own as Open Energy Transition. It's just like a platform or a modeling framework or data set that is accessible online, and it's open source, openly licensed and developed by various research institutions, with a head who has basically driven all the developments is now professor at TU Berlin. But it's an open source license, and it's the core also of our services. So first, what we want to do is we use this power of open source in our company. And first, I want to introduce the company, why we were established. And we are actually quite new. We were established this year officially in May, and it took us a while to get started, to get rolling, to get people on board. And our overall vision and motivation is that we want to transform energy planning using open technology. So everything we do is open source, open data, open models, open methods, and open community as well. And we believe that this way we can accelerate the energy transition, because not everyone has to start from scratch. You can use existing models, you can use evaluated models, you can use existing methods instead of developing them by yourself. The challenge also in energy planning in general is the traditional black box modeling approach, which lacks a lot of transparency. You don't know the assumptions, you don't know the cost assumptions, you don't know the methods behind the decisions being made in the end. And it also, in the end, slows down the transition, because you have to start from scratch, as I said before. But also, in the same time, there are hurdles in the adoption of open source models. So the first one is lack of support. So you have there a very good model, which has a great Python interface, but unfortunately, you're not an informatician, you're not a mathematician, you have some background in economics, and now we have to start programming. So there's a lack of support, and also software requirement gap. So ideally, you want to be someone who can use this tool without having to have great programming skills. And our goal and approach also is to address exactly these open source challenges. So we want to make energy planning, first of all, more transparent by using only open data and open models. We want to make it more accessible by providing the necessary modeling support. So if policymakers have questions, they want to tailor their existing open source models to their specific needs, make scenarios, implement policy roadmaps. We are someone they can go to and tailor the model to their specific needs. And overall, we believe that this approach is more collaborative. So if we implement methods and models into an open source framework, and others can use it and contribute their specific knowledge that they might have for the similar problem, then everyone can benefit from it. And that's the three main points that we believe as OET, how we can help with energy planning. And the change we want to see with this is that more studies are using open data and open tools. We believe that this way we can also improve the quality of open data. So for example, we have a project now with the European Commission, and they are actually someone who is a very good body to evaluate the data that we are using. So we tell them which open data is available out there and how we are using and processing it. But researchers are typically, or especially technical people, are not very good people to evaluate that, but politicians can. And this way, this data evaluated then by the Commission goes back into the main model, and then everyone who uses the model for studies, etc., can benefit from it. And that's also the outcome. So with better model assumptions, better cost assumptions, evaluated models, we can have a more robust and sustainable energy system, and we can probably lower also the costs of the whole energy planning infrastructure, because everything is transparent and you know what is happening. So that's our company, but how does our modeling workflow or our overall practices look like? So we build on open source models like PyPSA and PyPSA Europe. We are using those especially because we are co-developers and also core maintainers of the model. We also have a little bit of expertise in other models, but we have also seen that PyPSA is really, really, really popular. And I was really surprised that I saw so many hands in my first question here. But we are not restricted to PyPSA. It's just where we have the most expertise in. And today I want to show you a case study that we have recently, I think we have finished it last week, where we released the second version of the model. And the case study was about the goal was to decarbonize the electricity system in Kazakhstan. So the first task was to reproduce historical data of the Kazakh system, so that we can see that the model actually does what it is supposed to do, to see, okay, we can match the electricity mix that we have seen in the past. And we can also see, for example, transmission congestion in the right places where they actually really appeared. And then starting from an evaluated model, we want to make projections for the future, modeling the energy transition into a more renewable system, to have bigger shares of wind and solar electricity. And in the end, we have a reproducible 100% transparent energy model, system model, and a pathway, which is available online. So here is the link to our GitHub platform. It is released, it is tested. And if you just look it up, this is exactly following the link. You can see here all the licenses, which are all open licenses. You can see the data that we are using and the scenarios that are part of the study that is still to be published in the coming weeks or months. You can see all the methods and the scripts, that's mainly Python scripts. There's a README, and it also includes extensive documentation. So this project was together with Agora Energiewende, which is also a think tank in Berlin. You can see here that it is tested. It has CI testing, the size of the repository. The most restrictive license is still an open one, and it's reuse compliant, which means that everything that we use has an open license. So if you use it, nobody can sue you for it. There's also documentation where it tells you how to set it up. We built on PyPSA Earth, so all the developments are on top of PyPSA Earth. So we also have to use PyPSA Earth, and how you can execute it. It really worked. Like, I never talked to our client, and he just followed our instructions and was able to execute the model himself. Yeah, and here are some results. So you can visualize, for example, the model with the Kazakh system. So this is Kazakhstan, and here you can see in the different shades of blue the electricity demand. You can evaluate if that matches what you would expect. You can see where the coal plants are located. You can see where the gas plants are located, where wind plants and so on is located. You can also run an optimization and just try to reproduce the system and evaluate it against national report numbers. So the numbers in this column are the ones that we have received from our models after running an optimization. And these ones are in national reports. And then you can compare those numbers. It's hard to judge from the numbers if 1 terawatt hour for Kazakhstan is much. It is probably less than 1 terawatt for a very, very small country. Therefore, we can also calculate in percent and then calculate the error. And you can see that the error in all of those cases is less than 1%. That's actually a fine-tuned model. So if you just run PyPSA, it probably won't produce those results. But after you have adapted all the input assumptions, as you have seen in the model repository with the data, then you can really get accurate modeling results. And from that, we can run also a future projection where we can see how much of onshore wind, run-of-river, and solar has to be extended to match certain goal share of renewable generation. So in this case, it's 40%. because also hydro is very large in Kazakhstan, which I, for some reason, forgot to put on the slide. But it's just good that we have a validated model that actually represents today's system to model a future system. So we believe that this can just generate a lot of trust with the investment decisions. And finally, this is a visualization with the optimized result with a lot of more solar and wind in the different colors. So there's a lot of solar PV built in the east, and also a little bit of wind. We can unfortunately see that there's still a lot of gas in the system, but this is just a 40% renewable model. And now I was talking about optimization. So I wanted to, so the main questions in energy infrastructure planning are the three key questions. Where should I build new infrastructure? How much of it should I build? And what does it all cost? Because overall, in the end, the electricity prices are what matters. So therefore, within PyPSA, the main objective function or the main objective that you want to have is to minimize the total costs of the system. So this is like a very mathematical thing that I just copied from my PhD thesis, actually. But it's also, you can see whenever you look up a PyPSA paper, you can see this objective function. So I just thought, let's just stick to it, because if anyone looks at PyPSA, they will probably stumble up on this equation. And parts of the equations are the infrastructure costs for new generation units, which is the first part of the equation, investment costs, like color-coded in yellow, for generation projects, also for storage capacity, which we didn't see in the previous Kazakhstan results, because 40% for Kazakhstan is not too much with a lot of hydropower, but storage is also part of it. We have new transmission line projects covered in the system, but also variable costs, such as costs for fuel, gas, coal, etc. And this solves the questions of where should we build it, because this is a very nodal problem, where every node is modeled with this letter V. So therefore, you can then in the end really extract where to build the new investment projects. It answers the questions of how much, because the overall variables of the optimization problem are the sizes of the capacity that are then in the end penalized with the costs for 1 megawatt of electricity, for example. And because we minimize the costs and penalize it with the respective cost terms, we know also how much it costs. But however, the optimization is also, of course, subject to many, many constraints. We have actually seen PyPSA has most of the same constraints that were previously introduced from you guys. So we also have balancing constraints for energy demand and supply. We have also circuit rules, electricity circuit rules, Kirchhoff's laws, transmission line constraints, variability of the weather, etc. And it's a very, very large problem, so it's super hard to solve, especially if you do it at this resolution. This is the European model, of course. So I made a small, or actually colleagues of mine made a small benchmark of open source solvers and Gurobi. And as you can see, that open source solvers, for example, CBC and GLPK are the green and the red one, line at the top, which actually didn't even execute at some point if the model became too large. So on the x-axis, you can see the size of the model, and on the y-axis, the runtime. And then here we also have benchmarked HICE solver and Gurobi. So HICE is the yellow one, which actually performs relatively well for small instances of PyPSA, and then Gurobi, the blue one in the bottom. Yeah, so I think that gave you a good impression of what we do as OET, and then also how our workflow work, and where also optimization is part of it. I have also some references, but that's just for future if you want to look it up. So thanks for your attention. I'm happy to answer questions, and I hope I'm in time, because I forgot to look at it.
That was Chris. I actually have a question, if I may start.
Yeah, sure.
So everything's open energy transition.
Yeah.
OB is not so. We are all open people, but we are not so open when it comes to license fees. So how do you envision that the community could work with various solvers?
So, well, so first of all, we have seen in the final benchmark that we have also compared Gurobi against Highest Solver. And Highest Solver is currently very well, and we use it a lot for development. So when we test the model for small instances, like try to see if a functionality really works locally. But then for business cases where we have larger and complex models where we cannot make simplifications such as time reductions, spatial reductions, the models usually blow up and become really, really big. And then this benchmark that I've shown here before doesn't really apply, because then also Highest goes really up in time and also doesn't solve in the end. So, and then I don't think that there's really an alternative currently other than commercial solvers. But I think even if you want to just verify assumptions, then we can always, and that's also the goal of open energy transition, provide a small problem so that really everyone can solve this small simplified model where we just put a warning, beware, this is a simplified model. Results can be different from the ones presented in certain publications because of those simplifications made. But then to make real planning and really real decisions in the end, we should use complex models because the decisions are just better.
I have several questions.
Yeah.
You said energy, is it limited to electricity only? Or do you model?
No, so the study that I have presented is electricity only study, but PyPSA, or we in general, offer also other sectors. So we cover currently the industry sector, heating sector, aviation sector, land use, agriculture sector. I think that's it. But yeah, some of them are really part of the optimization. Some are exogenously given. Exogenously means it's not part of the optimization. It's just something that we know how fast industry, for example, will electrify certain processes. But we also do model that.
In the modeling of the European platform, it was electricity. You showed a map.
Yeah, but it's just hard to display the industry sector. So usually what we have, and when we model the industry as well, you just model the electricity or energy demand for hydrogen or methanol or something like that. So it's also actually covered in the model. Or different technologies, for example, not only solar PV, but you also have methanol ships or other technologies to cover demands.
And it's all based on the data available publicly, so you represent flows that are actual, not or do you do forecasts as well?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Do you do forecasting, like based on data, you extrapolate flows and...
Well, we don't really use, the forecasting is really used only for exogenous model assumptions. For example, which technologies will be in running in 2040, 2050, depending on the planning horizon. Is that the question?
Okay. I don't. You might have heard of Plexos, which is modeling. How do you are you like an open source equivalent to software like that, or are you like on? You have common points with Plexos, but you are also very different because you told me you do energy and Plexos. I think they are specialized in electricity. So how do you differ from?
Yeah, so I do know Plexos, like the term or the company, or actually Energy Exemplars, the company or the model is called Plexos. So I have never used it because they won't sell it to us. But also we don't really see the need of it because, as I said, that's the main problem of intransparency. So if someone tells you go and buy a banana, you will need it. I wouldn't believe this person. And it's the same for where should we build our infrastructure, especially if it's that critical. And also it's just critical infrastructure. So I think there's also a lot of opposition in the public. Like people don't want stuff to be built in their backyards. There's many funny terms like Lulu. I'm not sure if you've heard of, like LULUCF is land use. I don't remember. Or banana is actually one. Build absolutely nothing anywhere near anything or something like this. I forgot the one for Lulu, but yeah, that's exactly the thing. So there's a lot of opposition. So whenever you want to build a new transmission line project, people say not here. But if we build nothing, nowhere, then the whole energy system won't work. So therefore, I think transparency is really key to these questions. And therefore, I don't really believe in the Plexus approach. But that's my personal view.
Okay, last question for Anna.
Yeah. So how do you engage with companies? Do you provide support only on the models which you have built, or do you help companies set up their own PyPSA model for that? So how do you?
So we do provide those tailored modeling solutions. So for example, in this Kazakh study that we have shown here, so we took PyPSA Earth in the beginning, and then we just ran it for Kazakhstan. That's something that everyone can do, just changing a few configuration parts. But we are really, that's also something that that our partner said, we really managed to really put the data in the right places and make the right modeling assumptions, like tailored for the Kazakh system within, I think it took us 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. And they said they would probably need a year to do it, because this is our, like, we do this every day. And for us, it's really clear where the problem is and how we can adapt the model to fulfill certain tasks. And then we provide it openly so that people cannot say you just did it because you know the solution, but they can actually look up what we did to tailor the model to certain to provide certain features.